there's a story that's kind of I tell that's similar to that, and it's Christmas dinner.
Uh-huh.
And you got three generations at Christmas dinner. You've got the grandmother, the mother, and the son. And
Uh-huh.
the son's in the kitchen watching mom cook a big ham, and Granny's in the living room. And so the mom takes this big ass ham and takes this big meat cleaver and whacks off about a third of the ham and throws it in the garbage, and then takes the rest of the ham and puts it in a roasting pan and sticks it in the oven. And the son goes, "Mom, why did you throw a third of the ham away?" And she kind of looks at her son and goes, "Well, because that's the way we've always done it. That's the way my mother taught. That's the way my mother taught me how to do it." And hey, Mom, why do we throw a third of the ham away? She goes, "Because the oven was too damn small for that big ham." Right.
Hey guys, it's Cowboy and Mark again here with Biz Unlearned, episode 11. Okay, 11.
11.
Okay.
Double figures.
And we always bring you good guests. And this is another very good person who deals with growth in business and very important business unlearned concepts. All right. So, Mark, do you want to go ahead and give us a lead in here?
I will indeed. This is a certain Michael Mills who will introduce himself shortly in his own inimitable way. You and I, Mike, go back now. I think it's 1996 we first met, when I brought eMyth, which we might touch on later, to the UK. And the reason that I wanted Mike to be on the call for the listeners and watchers is because if you take what I do, the Biz Connector end, which is all about the front end and networking and sales and lead generation, and then if you take Bill in the project management, the managing of change in a controllable way, but there's this big gulf between those two things. And frankly, it's what Mike does. He'll put his words on it, but business systemization, process management, it's the operational stuff. That means you've got to have that stuff working to either benefit from the lead stuff that I do, or certainly if you're going to cross into big project management that Bill does. So of all the guests that we've had on the call so far, the work that you do, Mike, is probably what I would call the most Biz Unlearned, because your topic still isn't a popular one, and we've got to do something about it to get more people. So how did you get to be on the call with us today, Mike? And let's start talking about your stuff.
Yeah. So Mark mentioned the eMyth. That's a series of books written by Michael Gerber on why most businesses fail and what to do about it. And the basic premise of the book is most businesses fail because they don't have processes. They are people dependent versus process dependent. So the classic origin story is a guy's working for another company. He's doing everything. He's handling customer complaints. He's doing estimates. He's out on projects. He's running around. And he finally says, "Hey, man, I should probably create my own business." So he creates his own business. He grows on his passion and hard work. And then he starts adding people. And the people he adds, he doesn't have any positions documented. He doesn't have any processes documented. He just needs to grow. So he adds people. And the next thing he knows, he's got 5 people, 7 people, 9 people, and he gets to this place where you just can't grow anymore. You can't scale because everything depends on him. And the eMyth is all about why those businesses can't grow is because they don't have processes. They don't have standard operating procedures that can be used to train and manage people and hold people accountable. So Mark and I were eMyth consultants for many, many years. I was an eMyth consultant for 17 years. Delivering
Wow.
Michael Gerber's eMyth Mastery Program. And what we found is that our clients would be in this program sometimes for 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, they wouldn't have any processes written and no job descriptions created. They'd gone through this whole program that was kind of foundationally built on this concept of you need processes to be able to scale, but none of our clients would have processes. And so my business partner and I decided, you know what, let's create a software application to help people organize and implement their processes. And so that's what we do. And in fact, in the eMyth Mastery program, Mark, as you remember, we didn't go into marketing at the beginning. We went into operations at the beginning so people could get their systems in place for handling new leads and new sales, and then they would do marketing. So when we walked through someone through the different modules in the eMyth Mastery program, sales came at the end, not at the beginning. So that's what we do. We created a software application that helps business owners organize and implement their standard operating procedures. And what makes our software application is called the Touchstone Business System. What makes it unique is that we integrate people, positions, and processes. So you create an organizational chart of your company. You add your employees. You link those employees to boxes on your organizational chart. And then you create all of your processes and link those processes to the boxes on your organizational chart. So when someone logs into our software, they log into a set of processes that are used to train them or hold them accountable. Everything they need is right there. It just makes it really easy for people to implement their standard operating procedures. And last thing I'll say about that is that most people that come to us, they already know they need processes. There are so many books written on this topic. I mean, there are the eMyth series of books. There's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. There's a book called Built to Sell by John Warrillo. There are all these books written on the importance and value of having SOPs, but nobody tells you how to do it. That's what we do. So we specialize in that. And when people come to us, most people already know they need SOPs, and many have already written a bunch of SOPs, but they've got SOPs up in Google Docs, and they've got them in Dropbox, and they've got them on their wiki or something like that, and people are downloading them to their laptops and iPads, and they're written in PowerPoint and Excel, and they've got videos and audios and Word docs and checklists, and they're in what we call SOP chaos. They've spent all this time, all this hard work trying to organize and implement procedures, but it's failed, and they're completely frustrated. So we can take all that content and organize it and link it to different boxes and link employees to those boxes so it's all organized, really easily accessible at the click of a button. So it's a great tool for anybody that's interested in scaling their business and becoming process dependent versus people dependent. And the last thing I'll say about that, I'm not saying that you don't need good people. You know, the eMyth gives you this sense that maybe you can just walk down the stairs, walk outside, and find some guy lying in the gutter, and if you've got processes, he can be your next best salesman. I don't really believe that. That's not the way I see smart businesses working. I think you still need good people, but you need processes to get those good people. You need processes to recruit, hire, train, and manage those great people. So that's my rant.
I mean, you're perfect. I did say if you wanted to go for a rant, you go for a rant. But, you know, obviously because of the time we go back, you know, coming up, whatever, 30 years or something, that over that time of those books being written, and you've been the one that's gone out and created a system to do the systemizing, not just talk about it. In my language, we've still got this business design fault hardwired in, because people, when they get to you, and as you clearly always say, they kind of know they need some processes when they get to you. But my starting point is we need to get the message to that person and more people sooner, so that they're almost laying the tracks. Because I think your example of, you know, where most people think of businesses, go and get sales, and then when you got sales, but you're rightly so saying, really, because sales equals go get money, doesn't it? That's the thing that it puts it at the front. But really, you're hitting that, for me, just about the biggest Biz Unlearned point there is. If you haven't got the systems, you'll never be able to grow the sales or the business. So somewhere we've got to get this horse and cart message delivered better, because it's seen as a bit unsexy, this stuff, isn't it? When in reality, you get this stuff in first, the whole business becomes more sexy.
Right. And yeah, I mean, my processes are boring things. But if you think about it logically. So I had a client, for example, I was helping him back in the eMyth days. I was helping him with his sales processes, and I asked him, how much does it cost you to get a new client? And he said, usually about $1,000. And I said, well, what percentage of your referrals and your leads do you convert into clients? And he said, oh, about 90%. And I said, well, the reason you're able to convert 90% of your leads into sales is because you own the company. You've been in the company for 17 years. You can do whatever you want with the client. If you hire a salesperson, he was about to hire a salesperson, that salesperson's going to probably be able to convert 30% of your leads, maybe 30% of your leads. And this guy just freaked out. He said, well, I can't afford that. That means that I'll go from $1,000 to convert a sale to $3,000 a sale. And that will never work. And I said, yes. So what you need to do is, A, you need a better lead generation system that will be able to generate leads for less money. And B, you need processes in place so that you can convert sales better than 30%, those leads that you get in. So as soon as a business owner starts recognizing that their life is overwhelmed by leads and conversions and the buck always stops here, that's when they start seeing that, wow, I better put processes in place. And that's why, Mark, that's why a lot of people, if they come to me and they go, well, why are processes so important? I just basically say, here, go read the eMyth. And if you connect with it, then come back to me. But I don't need to tell you why processes are important. You've got to know that on your own, because I'll never be able to convince you of that.
Well, see, Bill, if you jump to I guess, kind of the bigger end of stuff, of the projects where you come in, how do you see some of the stuff that Mike's talking about at the bigger end of corporations? If they were more process driven, would they have more likelihood of not needing to pull the cowboy in to save their project? Would they have a firmer base to start from?
They would absolutely have a bigger base to start from. One of the first things that we did, and I said we because I'm thinking of another guy that I entered the organization with, the Mission Critical organization. The first thing we did is we went through their life cycle, project management life cycle process. Okay, that's the first thing we did. All right. And it was nearly 300 pages. So we spent a few days on it. And we talked about it and tossed it around. And but the life cycle process did give you opportunities to change that process and get approval for it. What you had to do to get approval. All right. And but it took a smart person to actually get to know what the changes should be and to sell those changes. But what I hear here is, yes, processes are definitely needed on a daily basis. Boom, 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 boom. They're needed on a daily basis. They're absolutely needed. That's what I hear here. But I don't know how you go about implementing those, because in my mind, when I hear a customer needs processes and they know they need process, I thought that was really great that the customer already knew they needed it. I'd love to know that because they don't seem to know that they need project management sometimes. But for you to go in and institute processes is a project. Okay, that absolutely is a project. Because you're changing them, you're taking them from point A to point B, right? And processes will change, so you need process improvement teams, all right? But processes will change, and sometimes they will change rapidly. I mean, the mission critical group had extensive processes. And on 9/11, when they flew jets into the, Twin Towers, our processes changed rapidly. Okay. There was no plan for that. There was no plan. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things, Bill, if I could jump in, that process, that project of putting processes in a business, we've been doing this for so long. We've been doing this for almost 25 years. We've kind of, I see it as two steps or two projects. The first project is very much a project. And it really can be done in about 6 to 10 hours. And what the first step is what I like to call creating the foundation of a process-dependent business. It's not about writing all of the processes. It's about setting up this foundation, building the blueprint of what a process-dependent business looks like. And there are 5 steps. The first step is vision. They need to know where they're going. If they're ever going to get to where they want to go, they need a vision. And so they put the vision in. And the value, a lot of people say to me, why the heck do I need a vision for processes? I mean, I just have to start writing processes. I often say, no. Let's start with the vision, because you're going to use your vision in your strategic planning process. You're going to use your strategic your vision in your onboarding process. You're going to use your vision in your management process. Let's get your vision in, because the second step of the systemization, the building the foundation for your process-dependent business, is creating the organizational structure of that future business. So you have this dynamic organizational chart that is part of your growth plan. You can start seeing where you want to grow to. The third step, so that organization chart becomes a blueprint of your vision in terms of its positions. The third step is understanding, what is this project ahead of me? Let's just name all of the processes. Don't worry about writing them right now. Let's just name processes. What are your processes for sales and marketing? What are your processes for client fulfillment? What are your processes for HR, admin, finance, IT? And what are your processes for strategy and management? We organize them in those 4 key functions. Then you link all of those processes to the boxes on the org chart that need them. And once you've got all that linked done, and then you put in your employees and link those employees to boxes, once you've got that, that's the foundation, right? We got the vision, we got the org chart, we've got a complete understanding of what are all the processes in the business, and everything is linked up. We've automatically created process lists for every box on the organizational chart, and we've assigned our people to one or more of those boxes. So now we have complete functional accountability. Everything that has to happen in the business has been assigned to an employee, which is filling a box. So that's step 1. That's creating that foundation. Now you've got to write the processes. And what we generally teach is prioritize, because you might have 300 processes now in this list. So what we say is, look, you got to prioritize what processes you want to write. Number 2, you've got to start writing them. Number 3, you've got to implement them. And then you got to kind of monitor them. And that's where we get into process improvement. But essentially, it's prioritize, write, implement, repeat. Prioritize, write, implement, repeat. And that is an ongoing thing for the life of a business, because as soon as they get all of their processes created, there is then process improvement. And that's where you go in and you quantify the existing way of doing things. And you say, like, how much time does it take? How many people and then you start innovating things like, well, what if we drop this process or this step out of the process? Would that impact it? What if we did these 2 steps concurrently? So this is what we call process improvement, what you were referring to a moment ago. So you quantify, and then you innovate those processes to make things more profitable, make things happen faster, and then you implement those changes. So it's a constant cycle of quantification, innovation, and implementation, and then you do it again and again. So a lot of people come to me and they say, well, Michael, how long is it going to take me to systematize my business? And I say, well, I can help you create that foundation for a process-dependent business so you'll be successful in this endeavor. That'll take about 6 to 10 hours. But the writing of your processes, that's going to be ongoing. You're always going to be writing processes for the life of the business.
If I remember correctly, Mike, this is one of your sort of explanations to me back in the day, which is if you think of business systemizing a bit like the first day you got your PC, if you were told the job was to put all of the stuff we've all got in our PCs today, 1, 2, and 5 years later, people would be slashing their wrists going, it'll never happen. but over time, it kind of gets done. And I've always thought that's a nice way to look at it, because people turn on their PCs and we're all using it now, and it's part of what people do. But if you tried to describe what was in it at the beginning and that you're going to get it there. So this is quoting you back, and I've quoted this a few times, but all that means, and Bill probably knows that I would go here, that it's almost like the PR, if you like, of business systemizing. Kind of business design has just got a lousy image, because if you think of, and I love all that foundation language, and I'm the one that I love. Lego's the biggest toy in the world, isn't it? And when we were all kids, all you had was that grey base, and then you built a fort every time, because that's all we knew to bloody build. But you needed that damn grey base to build it, and somewhere the kind of the way or people that teach this stuff, we've got to get more of the business community in the Biz Unlearned sense to be thinking along your lines so that they get to you sooner is for me. Are the business universities teaching this stuff? What, there's, as you say, big, well-known books out there, but this still isn't common business practice. And that's the gap that we're operating. That's the unlearned point. People have to do this if they're going to scale, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I heard was you went through the process of defining scope. Then you went through a process of defining resources. Maybe you used a RACI chart. This person is responsible for this. This person is responsible for that. Yada, yada, yada. This is going to cost you this amount of money. Whatever. Then you went through a process of scheduling. This is when we can get you set up by, and it will be a repetitive process. So that is scope, time, and resources, the triple constraints of project management with a process improvement team, which is a closed loop process. That's what I heard. What do you think about that?
Well, I would say that a lot of times when people are talking to me about Touchstone, they're kind of thinking that Touchstone is a project management software application, and I say it's not. Touchstone is not a project management application. Project management is it's much more complicated. It's much more intense. It's focused. Systematizing a business, yes, it's a project. And in fact, those 5 steps that I just talked about could probably be put into a project management application. The Touchstone software is really a place where you hold all this information on how to do things. So if you had a project management application like Basecamp, how to enter a new project into Basecamp would be a set of instructions in Touchstone, because there's no place to do that in Basecamp. So if you've got, we are this company and we have multiple projects, and every time we get a new project, we have to enter it into Basecamp, and we have to assign these and do this and do that, and all that stuff that you do, Bill. The instructions for how to add that new project into Basecamp would be housed in Touchstone. And you might say, well, when a new project comes in, I do this and I do that and I do this and I do that. And so I got a new guy and I just say, just watch what I do. But he's only going to retain about 18% of what you tell him.
Oh, knowledge.
Right. We call that type of training when you don't have documented procedures. We call that call that type of training tribal training. And
Tribal
because
knowledge training.
yeah, same thing. And in the old days, if we were all a bunch of cavemen, and we could probably learn that way, because we would probably be chanting, singing, it would be some sort of tribal thing, and our minds wouldn't be exploding with a million things. But today, that tribal training process is useless. And so that's why people get garbage in, garbage out. Okay, oh, here's a new project. Let me enter to Basecamp, and it's all wrong. And, well, you told me how to do it that way. And the person says, no, I didn't. So, so we'll create processes for that. And there's a brand new tool that is really cool in Touchstone that we integrated. We've integrated Scribe. I don't know if you've heard of the tool Scribe. Really, really great little tool where if you had Basecamp, the manager could just literally add a new project to Basecamp and capture that and paste it into Touchstone. And now you've got the process, the documented process for how to add a project to Basecamp. And it can be done for not just Basecamp, but any software application, Excel, Word, Keep,
Sure.
Asana, anything can be captured like that. So yeah, it's project management. Touchstone it complements project management, really. It helps if you had a project management process, Touchstone would have the documentation on how to get that project done.
What I consider extremely interesting, Mark, is, and Mike, both of you, is that he said 5 steps. 5. I use a 7-step life cycle process. The last 2 steps are sustaining and end of life. But he named all fucking 5 steps. Okay, he may not be, Mike, you might not be, taking it from a project management background, but I was smiling the whole way because you were going ding, 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 all the way through them. Okay. I mean, you were going all the way through them. Okay. First, we start with the concept. Then we start with the detailed planning. Then we start with the engineering. Then we start with the testing. I'm rolling these out, right? Then we get it ready for rollout. Then we have, sustaining, which is, your continuous process improvement. And then finally, that's not working anymore. End of life. Boom. End of story. So, you hit them all.
But that's a key point, Bill. That's one of the key unlearned points, though, isn't it? Because we know out there's a world of tools, and there's certainly a world of names, and the States is such an advanced business market that it names everything. So then you get into arguments. It's like a Monty Python sketch, isn't it? Where you go to John Cleese and say, "Are you the People's Judean Front?" And he says, "No, F off. Where the Judeans people." He says the same letters are rearranged because there's already so many of these different factions. Well, what you're describing is the methodologies within, say, project management and process management, and the fundamentals are very similar. But the applications and the knowledge of when people who get to see the toolkits, that's very different. And that's where we then get a very confused business user base who, if they got to Michael 2 years earlier, chances are their business would run a lot more smoothly with a view to then other things that they want to use. But that's the buy-in problem end of this. They're so inundated. That's that we use the line, Michael, about biz connectors is because information isn't scarce anymore. In fact, it's deluging us every day. That the problem isn't now scarcity of information. It's too much information. Right. So if you want to find the needle in the haystack today, you need somebody to burn the damn hay to get, because all that's going to be left is the bloody. Well, that's the job that we've got, isn't it? Because there's so much hay in front of them that they don't get to you soon enough. That for me is the big Biz Unlearned point around. If they it's so much more difficult if they come to you 2 years after when they should have done.
Yeah, and so many people come to us and go, "Boy, I wish I'd known about you guys 2 years ago or 10 years ago. I've spent 7 years writing all these processes and they're all crap. And if only I knew how to write a process." And we have to teach people how to write processes. One of the things we say, and probably Bill, you know this too, is that to the extent that you write more and more and more detail and content in your process is to the extent that nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to follow it because they're going to pull it up on their screen and go, "I don't have time to read that." So it's not hard to write a process. It's not hard. And when you write the process concisely and exactly, when you train the process, that's when you fill in all that garbage. That's when you tell the stories, and that's when you tell, well, if you don't do this, this is what happened. That tribal stuff still works because stories really land key concepts. Don't put the stories in the process. Nobody's ever going to read them. The stories come in when you're training the process. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we even have AI built into Touchstone. So, it's pretty cool. You can say, well, I need a customer complaint system. So you go into Touchstone and you pull up AI inside of Touchstone. You go, I need a customer complaint process, step-by-step customer complaint process for a residential HVAC company. Boom, and ChatGPT does what ChatGPT does, and pop brings up a beautiful step-by-step process, and you go add to work plan, and it automatically adds it to Touchstone, and then they can edit it, customize it, shift steps around, and it's beautifully done. I mean, that's one of the advantages of AI. Maybe some people on this podcast are going, "Oh, AI, stay away from AI." There's part of me that kind of agrees with that, right? But man, does it make life easy in systematizing a business.
Right. So Mike, you were able to do your little opening rant, which I asked you. Your Gate said, "By all means, fire away." But if you were standing on the top of the mountain and you were screaming down at the high polloi of all of us, as it were, and says, you got to wake up to this, what would you be saying in terms of what's the key? Should's a funny word because it tells us we're all bloody stupid if we don't do it. But what should we be doing as business owners to get to this? Because all I know, and we all see it in different forms, but I've spent those 30 years unpicking the problems that if they'd done this years before, because that's where I'm not the systemizer. That's why you still do it and I don't, but I'm very educated that way. And as my mother would say, beware the convert, because I'm a convert to it. So I then shepherd them to people like you, but we have not got the message across. So they're still behind, and it means the businesses have still got the Apollo 13 fault hardwired into them. It's still a bloody struggle. What would you be saying to them that says, other than come by Touchstone, but other than a bit more than that, what's the message?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark.
Question mark, exactly. That's what I do. Question mark.
Well, no, it's a great question. I think what has to happen. I think what has to happen is they just have to be conscious. They have to recognize that they are not the only person that knows how to do what they need to do. The owner. I was doing a demo or a consultation for a roofing company, and so I'm meeting with the owner. This was a guy who this was years ago. He was in my eMyth. He was in the eMyth mastery program, and I said, well, how do you do, how about a salesman? You need to hire a salesperson. He goes, oh, no, nobody can sell. And I kind of went, well, okay, tell me, what's your sales process? And he said, oh, no, my salesperson, nobody, I don't really have a sales process. And I went, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, only, I do all the sales. This is the guy that owned the company. And I said, well, just walk me through the process. And he goes, okay. Well, the first thing I do is I walk up to the door and I knock on the door and I take a step back. And when the person comes to the door, the first thing I say is, "Hi, I'm John Smith. I'm with ABC Roofing. Is my truck parked okay back there?" And the person always says yes, and then he says he usually looks around. Are there tricycles or bicycles or basketballs or footballs or baseball bats on the lawn and stuff like that? So he's got some relationship building tools that when he walks into the house, he goes into the house, he does a little bit of relationship building, and then he says, "Okay, so you've got a problem with your roof. Would you mind if I go up on your roof and inspect it?" Great. And he walks me through his entire process. And I said, "So are you the only person in the world who knows how to do a sales call for a roofing company?" He goes, "Well, no." And I said, "Are there other roofing companies?" "Well, yes." "And do they have salespeople?" "Well, yes." "Well, don't you think they have a sales process that they teach their salespeople?" In fact, you just told me your sales process. And I walked him through every single step that he gave me. And he was kind of blown away because he realized that he could actually, in a sense, you're kind of giving up. Some people would see it as giving up control. And what I say is, no, you're getting more control because you just laid down the process. You establish a few expectations like that. So in other words, if you do 5 sales appointments, you really should get 3 deals. And each one of those deals is worth, $15,000. So now you've got metrics. But if you're not doing things consistently over and over and over again, and if you can't take those consistent things and give them to someone else, you're not in control. You're completely overwhelmed. Everything depends on you. So how do you tell someone that, Mark, until they realize that their life sucks? And once their life sucks because they don't have time for their kids, or their wife is saying something like, "Hey, you know what? If you don't stop working 24 hours a day, I'm out of here." Or they get sick. I mean, that's a lot of times when people they just finally they come around to it. And I'll say one last thing to this. If you're 25 years old and you've had a business for a year and a half, you're never going to be thinking this way. You're going to be thinking, all I have to do is work harder and I'm going to be the next Bill Gates. And it takes a few years to learn that that is so far from the truth. I remember that. I had a small business in New York City. I loved it. I loved the fact that the buck stopped with me. I was in control. I was the big man. Until my wife finally said, "You know what? I didn't sign up for this, man." I was working 7 days a week. I was working in New York City. It's easy to work 7 days a week. It's easy to work till 2 in the morning, and you can go out and it's like 8 in the evening in New York. And my wife finally said, "You know what? I'm fed up with this." And that's when I kind of realized, smarten up.
Yeah, come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, so it's very hard for us.
Business owner and self-employed.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Most people, when they're 25, 23, 24, they are self-employed. And they don't know that, though, Bill. They think they're a business owner. You are not a business owner until you're able to have these other employees who are doing things the way that you need them done. And it's really easy to recruit, hire, train, and hold people accountable to getting things done the way you want them done. That doesn't happen if you don't have processes, because you hire someone and you train them tribally, and then they don't do it right, and then you fire them and you say things like, there just aren't any good employees anymore. And that's just not true. There are lots of great employees. They just don't get trained well. They don't get hired well. They don't get interviewed well. They don't get managed well.
This tribal thing has been tested. I mean, you guys have probably both heard this before, the whole chimpanzee things, right? They put a bunch of chimps in a damn cage and they put a ladder there and a banana at the top of the damn, cage. And, and every chimp that, every time a chimp went up to try and get the banana, they hosed them down with a damn hose. And so another chimp would try and do it and they hosed them down with a damn hose. Eventually the chimps stopped doing it. And then they slowly rotated them out, right? They slowly rotated them out. and a new chimp would come in and he'd try and go up and get the banana. And the other chimps would beat the shit out of him because he doesn't want to get hosed out. And so eventually they had a completely whole new group of chimps in the damn cage with the banana and the ladder. And, nobody went and got the banana. Why? Because we don't do that. That's just not the way it's done.
Yeah.
All right? That's tribal shit. And that's the very nature of it. That's tribal shit. And it passes on from, person to person and whatever, maybe even generation to generation.
Yeah, there's a story that's kind of I tell that's similar to that, and it's Christmas dinner.
Uh-huh.
And you got 3 generations at Christmas dinner. You've got the grandmother, the mother, and the son. And
Uh-huh.
the son's in the kitchen watching mom cook a big ham, and Granny's in the living room. And so the mom takes this big ass ham and takes this big meat cleaver and whacks off about a third of the ham and throws it in the garbage, and then takes the rest of the ham and puts it in a roasting pan and sticks it in the oven. And the son goes, "Mom, why did you throw a third of the ham away?" And she kind of looks at her son and goes, "Well, because that's the way we've always done it. That's the way my mother taught. That's the way my mother taught me how to do it." And, "Hey, Mom, why do we throw a third of the ham away?" She goes, "Because the oven was too damn small for that big ham." Right.
Right?
Yeah. So, but until you watch, until you document, until you see it, you don't notice it. So
No. I mean, let's take Apollo 13, for example. Mark brought up the Apollo 13 example. NASA had processes out the
yeah, right.
All right? And Apollo 13 was still a fuck up. And at that moment, it became a whole nother project. The project now became, we need to get these guys home. It became a whole nother project. AI is not going to do that. Okay?
No.
Processes aren't going to do that. You had to change on a dime. You had to change on a dime and make it happen. And I see the hat, Mark.
That means we're in wrap-up period. We've got to bring this to a close.
But yeah, you had to change on
3
a
minutes.
dime. You had to change on a dime and make it happen. So yes, processes are definitely part of it. And if you launch a new product, if you launch a new service, if you launch something without finishing up with the processes, you're screwed. Okay?
Mhm.
I often have gone to companies and government institutions, and I said, "Okay, you're telling me you got problems, right? Map out your process for me, right?" And they go, "Bing, bing, 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 bing," and it's not closed loop, right? And I'm like, "What's your problem?" And they're like, "The problem is engineering is always doing customer service," and I'm like, "Well, I see no transfer of information from engineering to customer service." I'm like, if you don't transfer the information and you don't do the processes as part of your project, then you failed. Again, that's where your failure point is. So they go hand in hand, the project and the processes.
Yeah,
Right?
they do. I agree. Yeah.
But
know?
on that stuff, like psychology, like learned helplessness. You tie the little elephant up to the stump when he's little, so he stops pulling it. They're all the same examples. The monkeys with the hose and the cutting off the ham. That's classic Zig Ziglar territory, Michael. We're going back into good old material on this. But if you think about it, we're in this place where we've got to, because you're using the example of even with yourself, people kind of get their come to Jesus moment, whether it's a partner going, "I've had enough of you working 70 hours," or we even touched on one of the other books around this subject of, Rich Dad, Poor Dad stuff, wasn't it? In terms of he does the quadrant between self-employed as against having a business that will run without you. But you're getting to the point now that says, if we don't get people's mindsets to realize, and I think your example with the roofer, Mike, says it really. It's that people don't know really how much they know. And it's just getting this discipline, even if it starts by just writing things down as you're on the go. That's the PC analogy. You don't realize what's in there until you look at it. But we've got to somewhere, as we draw to a close, I'm not going to quit on this. We've got to bang the drum and disturb people enough to go, if you do this stuff earlier, in both of our countries, well, he's in bloody Ecuador somewhere, Mike. God knows where he is, but you know what I mean. In the countries that we operate in, even in the States, the great nirvana of business, we've still got high business failure rates, sub 5 years, and so we can't wait till year 4 when they're knackered and we've got to be saying, right up front, in the way they design their businesses, in what I call business mapping, we've got to be laying the path to the foundation for business systemizing. Because for me, this is the reason businesses fail. This area.
I just want to
final point, Mike.
I just want to add to what you say, business fail, because a lot of people say, well, my business hasn't failed. I've been in business for 7 years. But take a look at your life, buddy. Right. Business failure doesn't mean that you've gone out of business. Business failure means that you've been unable to achieve the dream that you had when you went into business. Nobody goes into business saying, I want to work 24/7. People go into business because they want to make a lot of money and they want freedom. So ask yourself the question, how much freedom have you got and how much money are you really making? And if you're making tons of money and working 10 hours a week, then wow, you got pretty lucky if you didn't have processes, but you're never going to get there if you don't have processes. Most people will say, I can barely make payroll and I'm working 24/7.
Right.
And that's not a life that you want. If you're 23 and 24, yes, you get a chance to work hard, but you do not want to get to be 50, 60, or 70 and be stuck back there, and you will be without processes unless you're lucky.
Well, there you go, Bill. Take us out on that one. That's the home run I wanted to hear.
You're completely correct, and processes are huge. Project management and processes go hand in hand. It's absolutely huge, and you are completely correct in that many companies don't start thinking about it until after they've grown, and sometimes, and I've seen this, they've grown to $500 million before they, actually, decided, well, maybe I need to think about this a little bit, because they grew unorganized. So, Mike, I thank you for coming here today and talking to us about this. And I want to tell our listeners to remember, like, comment, and share. We love the love, and let's get it done this week.
All right.
It's your time, Mike.
Thanks, Mark.
We'll speak again.
Thanks, Bill.
See you later.
Bye now.
You got it, buddy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You got it. Bye-bye now.